Okay guys, I got all the soldering done on the board, and so I thought I'd make a quick video uh, to maybe just describe to you a little bit better what it's doing for me and how it works. I know the pictures are maybe not that best for figuring it out, so I thought I'd show you here. So basically, on the board is segregated into two halves. Let me see if I can point here. This half here is for this connector, and this half over here is for the other connector. And physically, it looks like a mess, but physically, I've just placed the headers on the board in the same physical position that they exist on the connector. So again, this is a 100-pin connector, but not all of the positions actually have a conductor in them. And so I was thinking that it would help me locate myself a little bit faster if I just physically laid out the pins, I'm sorry, not the pins, the headers on the board the same way that they exist in the connector, in the harness in the engine harness connector. So that's the reason why it looks the way it does. And again, the way it works is there's 3 pins for each I/O, and I'm using a jumper right now, as you can see. And depending on the position of that jumper, so the jumper can be in 2 positions, either the position that you see now, or it can move over one. So instead of those far 2 pins, it would be over here, and all that does is take the connection from the engine harness, and instead of sending that to the stock ECU through this connector, to the Delphi ECU, it would then it would make the connection through this additional loom here. And what's inside of this loom is just a redundant bit to this. So I have the same number of leads in here that I do in here. And so slowly we're going to take control away from the Delphi, and we're going to send it to the MoTeC. And we're going to do it through this loom. So that's how that selection is made, is with jumpers. Now, some of the connections, in the process of reverse engineering this and taking over control, I'm going to need the signal to go to both ECUs. So an example of that would be the cam and crank position signals. Okay, those I'm not just going to be able to completely rob from one and give to the other and expect things to go nicely. So I'm going to actually make a 3-way jumper, so it'll bridge all 3 pins and take the connection to both ECUs. So that's how this works. If we flip it over, it got pretty hairy pretty quick. I guess I didn't have a real good grasp on what this was visually, or not visually, but physically, what it was going to turn into. The concept sounded good in my head, and I think this is going to work. I hope it's going to work. We're going to try it in a little bit. But if I had to do it again, I would probably design a board, like a multi-layered board, and instead of running leads like this raw to the back of the board, I would have the multi-layered board, and then everything on the board would be the headers, like I showed you earlier, that are on the other side, and then connectors. And then the looms have connectors, and they would connect to the board that way. It would allow the enclosure to be a little more tidy. Right now I've had to hog out holes in the side of it to allow these looms to pass out through, and it'll work now for for round one, but if I do it again, I'm definitely gonna design a board and have it printed. One thing you might be wondering, the black in there, that's a potting resin. It's RT125, and the reason why I did that is because you know, as you can imagine, if I were to, you know, really be, you know, pulling and flexing these looms around, it might weaken the solder joint that I've got in there and maybe break off and then touch other connections, and that's not good, right? So by potting it, I've basically immobilized the solder joint down there that's on the board. So now I can really, you know, move these around without any worries of messing up the connection, like breaking it off. That would be bad. What I've done is I've moved some stuff around just to make the connections a little bit easier. But this is, again, that's the board there, and this is the stock ECU. And so we have, remember, so there's two connectors from the engine harness. One that comes in here. You can't really see that very well, but right here. So that's connected to this one. And this is the other connector to this side of the board. All the jumpers are on, and they are in the position to make the connection to the Delphi. Nothing is to the MoTeC, obviously, because we're not doing that yet. So what that means is the secondary looms on here have nothing. There's nothing there. Everything is going through these two silver looms, which come from the back of the board and come over and connect to the stock ECU. So let's go ahead and start it and see what happens. Starts. She's doing it. Sweet. Well, guys, I don't see any smoke. Nothing's melting. I think it's gonna work. So I'll be doing more testing with this. Obviously, just letting it idle in the garage is not fair. I'll get the enclosure finished up and everything kind of a little more better situated back in this area, and then we'll just leave it plugged in for a while and see how it fares.